Welcome back. So on this program, we try not to take political sides. We're not a Republican newscaster, a Democratic one, not conservative or liberal. We believe in facts. You can find that stuff on plenty of other cable networks. We think when your elected representatives, Republicans or Democrats or independents, speak, they should, to the best of their ability, speak the truth. And if they don't, they should be held accountable, not for their political views or their governing philosophy, but for making stuff up. Well, tonight we're featuring Republican Congresswoman Michelle Bachmann. Today she literally raced away from Ardana Bash, who was trying to ask her questions about remarks that Bachmann herself made at the Conservative Political Action Conference over the weekend. In those statements, she slammed the White House reaction during the attack that killed 4 Americans in Libya last fall.
A war was raging in Benghazi for hours, and all we know is that our president went AWOL. While cries from American diplomats and soldiers went unanswered.
Well, then she shifted to government spending, specifically the White House budget.
A new book is out talking about the perks and the excess of the $1.4 billion a year presidency that we're paying for. And this is a lifestyle that is one of excess. Now we find out that there are 5 chefs on Air Force One. There are 2 projectionists who operate the White House movie theater. They regularly sleep at the White House in order to be readily available in case the first family wants a really late show. And I don't mean to be petty here, but can't they just push the play button? We are also the ones who are paying for someone to walk the president's dog. Now,
a lot to talk about. Keeping them honest, the Benghazi killings obviously leave plenty of room for criticism. We've been very critical on this show, looking at a lot of facts about that. The claims, though, of $1.4 billion in White House perks in excess, they fail on the facts and simple fairness. Congresswoman Bachmann apparently got her information from a 131-page self-published book by a longtime Republican lobbyist. The book provides no specific sourcing for the claims it makes, no sourcing. According to the Washington Post, which dug deep into this, the only scholarly work on the subject was published in 2010 by the left-leaning Brookings Institution, and it found that the Bush White House in 2008 cost about $1.6 billion to run, nearly $1.1 billion of which went to the Secret Service and the White House chopper fleet, not to perks. So if Congresswoman Bachmann is right, and that's a very big if, the current occupants are actually $200 million cheaper. As for the 5 chefs, 5 cooks would be more like it. Unlike on commercial flights, the lion's share of meals on Air Force One are prepared fresh on board. 50 passengers, several meals on a long flight, that is a lot of cooking. As for those projectionists, there's nothing new there either. According to the White House Museum, Jimmy Carter watched nearly 500 films while in office. And as for Bo the dog, he has no designated walker, none. The White House gardener actually walks the dog. Turns out the guy likes dogs and has walked presidential dogs for the last 8 administrations. But the notion that this is a uniquely extravagant president dies hard with Ms. Bachmann. And remember, this is not the first time she's made detailed claims about presidential spending without real facts to back them up. Here she is several years ago on this actual program.
I think we know that just within a day or so, the President of the United States will be taking a trip over to India that is expected to cost the taxpayers $200 million a day. He's taking 2,000 people with him. He'll be renting out over 870 rooms in India, and these are 5-star hotel rooms at the Taj Mahal Palace Hotel. This is the kind of over-the-top spending. It's a very small example, Anderson.
The White House is saying that idea that this is a $200 million boondoggle is completely overstated, that number, it's wildly inflated, those numbers.
And that may be what that White House is stating, but again, we have never seen a trip at this level before, of this level of excess.
No one really knows the cost because for security reasons they don't disclose the cost. So this idea that it's, $200 million, whatever, is simply made up.
Well, these are the numbers that have been coming out in the press.
These are the numbers that have been coming out in the press. For the record, as we discovered back then and reported, the story originated in a report from the news agency Press Trust of India. So it's an Indian paper. Their source was a provincial government official, an Indian government official who was unnamed. So one single unnamed source from an Indian provincial official, how that official would allegedly know how much the President of the United States and the U.S. government was spending, I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. Congresswoman Bachman has made other claims that simply do not stand up as well, namely that Huma Abedin, a top advisor to then Secretary of State Clinton, may be under the sway of the Muslim Brotherhood. That allegation was found factually groundless, drew sharp criticism at the time from both sides of the aisle. Republican colleagues, including Senator John McCain, called her out on that publicly. We invited Congresswoman Bachman to come on the program to talk about her latest allegations. Guess what? She declined. The invitation stands open. In the meantime, Dana Bash tried keeping him honest, and she joins us now. So, Dana, you really did have to literally chase the Congresswoman down. What did she tell you?
Well, I should say, Anderson, the last time I ran after Michelle Bachmann on one of those other issues that you listed, I told you that the bad news is she can walk very fast in heels. The good news is so can I. But this time she was moving so fast, I have to tell you, it tested my endurance. I told the Congresswoman I wanted to talk to her about her speech at CPAC, about questionable accusations she made about the president's lavish lifestyle. Here's how it went.
What I want to ask you about is the fact that you said that you talked about the excesses that he's engaged in, the fact that he has a dog walker, which is not true.
The big point of my speech was about Benghazi. This was an absolute disaster.
But you also made
And as
specific
I said,
accusations about the
Secretary
president
of
spending
State,
money that other presidents
Dana,
also made.
The real issue is there are 4 Americans that are dead. The Secretary of State was not in conversation with the Secretary of Defense or with the chair of the Joint Chiefs of Staff.
I think that's an
She
important
was not
point.
there.
I think
And
that's
the
an important point, but this is
that
another.
The President of the United States didn't care about those 4 Americans, and they were killed. That's the point. And
if
we've got to focus.
But if you want to focus on that, then what?
Security.
If
That's
what you
it,
want to
Dana.
focus on, why did you
That's what's important.
bring
You
up the
wanna
other
talk about
things?
Dog handlers, and there's 4 Americans killed.
But
That's
Congresswoman,
an
you're
insult
the one who brought it up.
These Americans.
You're the one who brought it up.
Now, Anderson, to be fair, Congresswoman Bachmann doesn't always answer my questions, but she does usually smile and she's polite. This was, in that sense, a bit out of character for her.
It is, I mean, what's amazing about that quote is that she tried to turn it against you as if, how dare you bring up a dog walker, something so petty, when, because of the horror of what's happened in Benghazi, she's the one who brought up the dog walker, and the projection is she's the one who's made these allegations. And now she's saying, when you're asking her about it, she's trying to make you seem like an irresponsible reporter for daring to ask her about that.
Yes, she did. And I tried. It doesn't take a lot, or it does take a lot, I should say, to make me speechless, and I was a little speechless. That is not the response that I expected from her. But, you know, I have to tell you, Anderson, I checked in with some people who know how she operates, people who work with her on the inside, and they weren't surprised about this in the big picture for many reasons, primarily because the name of the game at the CPAC convention, which draws conservative activists from all around the country, is to be provocative. She knew talking about presidential dog walkers and cooks and projection operators would be memorable, and these sources admitted to me, look, Bachmann's MO tends to be shoot first, ask questions later, especially if she doesn't have people around her to advise her against muddying, which, you know, I think you can argue was a pretty strong argument and speech about Benghazi and presidential leadership.
Well, also, I should just point out, this network was the network that was blasted by the Obama administration for our early reporting on Benghazi and what we uncovered in the burned out wreckage in Benghazi. So the idea that somehow we're not talking about Benghazi is just absurd. We really do struggle in situations like this because we want to call out politicians when they say things that are flat out untrue. But Congresswoman Bachmann is kind of a double-edged sword, isn't it? I mean, she does fundraise off of this kind of stuff.
She does. And Anderson, we can be transparent with our viewers that we, your producers and us, we had a real discussion about this today because we know that the more oxygen we give this, the more Bachmann will raise money off of it. I mean, this is just one example of a fundraising notice that she sends out. She's one of the most active fundraising email lists of all members of Congress. She sends out 5 alarm notices to supporters, sometimes more than 1 email a day, warning that if they have to contribute or her campaign will fall under the weight of Democrats and the liberal media, and that's basically what this one today said. This was on a different subject. Wouldn't be surprised if she uses this program, this report, in another one tomorrow or beyond. But, you know, we're doing our job.
And again, the invitation stands. She can just sit. She doesn't have to run through the aisles. We'll just talk to her seated. It'll be much easier for everybody. Dan,
how am I going to get my exercise, Anderson?
All right, yeah, that's true.